From translation, TLB, the Living Bible. This 291 day of the year. Today we are reading passages Mark 8-9. Mark chapter 8, verses 1-39. About this time another large crowd had gathered, and they had nothing to eat. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I feel so sorry for these people. For 3 days they have stayed with me and have had nothing to eat. And if I send them home without food, they will faint along the way, for some of them live a great distance from here. But where can we get enough food to feed them all? His disciples asked. Jesus asked them, How many loaves do you have? 7, they replied. Then Jesus told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks to God for them, broke them into pieces, and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. They also had a few small fish, and he asked God to bless these too. Then he told the disciples to distribute them too. So everyone ate as much as they wanted, and they gathered 7 large baskets of leftovers afterwards. There were about 4,000 people there that day. After sending them home, Jesus got into the boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. When he arrived there, the Pharisees began to argue with him. To test him, they demanded that he show them a heavenly sign from heaven. He sighed deeply in his spirit and said, Why do these people demand a miraculous sign? I assure you, I will not give this generation any such sign. Then he left them, got back into the boat, and crossed to the other side of the lake. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food, and they had only 1 loaf with them in the boat. As they sat in the boat, Jesus said to them, Watch out. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod. They began to discuss this with each other and said, He said this because we didn't bring any bread. Knowing what they were saying, Jesus asked them, Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Don't you understand or remember anything? Don't you even yet see or comprehend? Are your minds so blinded? Have you forgotten that I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and that you picked up 12 baskets of leftovers? And what about the 7 loaves for the 4,000? How many baskets of leftovers did you pick up? 7, they answered. Don't you understand yet? He asked them. When they arrived at Bethsaida, some people brought a blind man to Jesus and begged him to touch the man. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes and putting his hands upon him, he asked him, Can you see anything now? The man looked up and said, Yes, I can see people, but they look like trees walking about. Then Jesus placed his hands on his eyes again, and this time his eyes were opened. His sight was perfect, and he could see everything clearly. Jesus then sent him home, saying, Don't go back into the village. Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and went up to the villages near Caesarea Philippi. As they were walking along, he asked them, Who do people say I am? Well, they replied, Some say you are John the Baptist, others say you are Elijah, and others say you are one of the prophets. Then he asked them, And what about you? Who do you say I am? Peter replied, You are the Messiah. Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. Then Jesus began to tell them plainly that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but 3 days later he would rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. Get away from me, Satan, he said. You are not thinking God's thoughts but man's thoughts. Then, calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, If any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways, take up your cross and follow me. If you try to keep your life for yourself, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? If a person is ashamed of me and my message in these adulterous and sinful days, I will be ashamed of that person when I return in the glory of my Father with the holy angels. I assure you, some standing here right now will not die until they see the kingdom of God arrive in great power. Mark chapter 9, verses 1-34. About 8 days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John up the mountain to pray. As he was praying, his appearance was altered, and his clothes became dazzling white, far whiter than any earthly bleach could ever make them. Then 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared and began talking with Jesus. They were glorious to see, and they were speaking about Jesus' death and resurrection, which he would soon accomplish in Jerusalem. Peter exclaimed, Master, it's wonderful to be here. Let's build 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He didn't really know what to say, for they were all terrified. Then a cloud came over them, and a voice spoke from the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. When the voice ceased, they saw Jesus there alone with them. As they descended the mountain, Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone what they had seen until he had risen from the dead. So they kept it to themselves, but they discussed among themselves what he meant when he said he would rise from the dead. Then they asked him, "Why do the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must come back first?" Jesus responded, "Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready. Why then is it written that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be treated with contempt? But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they didn't recognize him and did to him whatever they wanted. In the same way, the Son of Man will also suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he had spoken about John the Baptist. When they returned to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd surrounding them, and some of the teachers of religious law were arguing with them. When the crowd saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with awe and ran to greet him. Jesus asked his disciples, "What are you arguing with them about?" A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought my son so you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground, and he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to cast out the spirit, but they couldn't do it." Jesus said, "You faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought the boy. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion, and he fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has this been happening?" "Ever since he was a child, the spirit has often thrown him into fire or water, trying to kill him. But if you can do anything, please help us, have mercy on us." "If you can," Jesus asked. "Anything is possible if a person believes." The father instantly cried out, "I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief." When Jesus saw that the crowd of onlookers was growing, he rebuked the evil spirit. "You spirit that won't let him speak," he said, "I command you to come out of this child and never enter him again." Then the spirit screamed and threw the boy into another convulsion and left him. The boy appeared to be dead, and a great cry went up from the crowd as they gathered around him. But Jesus took him by the hand and helped him to his feet, and he stood up. Afterward, when Jesus was alone in the house with his disciples, they asked him. Then Jesus left that place and passed through Galilee. But he didn't want anyone to know he was there, but they didn't understand what he was saying, and they were afraid to ask him about it. But they didn't answer, because they had been arguing about which of them was the greatest.